This game was requested by Cyberpunk Girl, but conveniently enough I'd also pinged it myself on my own searches through the free-to-play page on Steam, so it made sense to do the review for it. I thought at first on seeing it would be a text game, and it is a text game where you have to make various choices of response to your friend in hopes of trying to date her, since it's made clear very early on that you'd like to ask her out but are building up to it. But it's a text game with a twist, in that it's actually a platformer game as well. It's set during the coronavirus period, from mid-March this year to in the future, in August, so it's very contemporary and relatable to the current situation people may have been through or are currently going through. That definitely helps you to connect with the game, since the virus has affected everyone and we can all relate in some degree with our own experiences. The game sets its tone very well. It passes its messages across very easily. With the hesitation and rewriting of text, you can feel the trepidation in your character. And actually, we've all done it before, where there have been things we wanted to say that haven't felt right, or it's taken us a few attempts to get it out there. It took me a couple of minutes to grasp that I was in fact the male in the situation, so when I sent a meme and said it was meant for another girl, I thought I'd stoofed it, but luckily it came out okay. I was trying to figure out by the wording which was the least dangerous answer, but I was having a bit of trouble. I also think, and I'm not entirely sure but fairly certain, that the text bubbles appear higher or lower depending on the sender's mood. So when the conversation turned sadder, the texts would come through lower down. I tried to use this, rightly or wrongly, as an indicator of how well I was doing. So sometimes when I wasn't sure about an option I'd picked, I'd take it as some reassurance if the next text bubble popped up higher. As said, the atmosphere is great. I felt frustrated when the text was moving slowly, was happy when I started getting through, and at the end I was proud of getting the good ending. I also had to laugh out loud when the game called me a Chad because I said I'd been exercising in the quarantine, which is exactly what I was doing in real life. The engagement with the game and the goal was really good and kept me gripped all the way to the end. Now, you do get a choice of options for responses, but also some of them feel a little bit like traps. The character rewrites text quite often. If you jump on a bubble to send whilst he's doing this, it won't stop on the message you jump on, it'll send when it's ready. Sometimes when you jump on it, you find out the message isn't actually done yet, and then your clown of a character goes and adds some questionable addition to the message you thought you were sending. Or he changes it completely, like when I wanted to ask a nice question to carry on a conversation that was a little personal, and he decided to turn it into a question about the bloody weather. The weather! I'm British, and we always talk about the weather, but mostly to strangers to start small talk. If you start talking about the weather midway through a conversation, you're basically admitting to everyone involved that this conversation is now dead and all of you would be better off just letting it die. Please walk away with your dignity, thank you. Sometimes there was more than one option I wanted to pick. Sometimes there were no options I wanted to pick, but there's got to be limits to choices, otherwise the game would spiral, and I just made the best of it that I could. The actual worst choice I had to make was at the start of one of the days where my character said, "I have something important to tell you." As a player, it's nice to know where your person is going with this before you make them say something dumb, but I just rolled with it. He was listening to music, he said. It reminded him of her, he said. Then, of course, she asked the dreaded question, what song? 4 song choices popped up, and I'll be honest and say I've never heard any of them in my life. So, like the old young person I am, I had to Google the lyrics and the songs to try and find out which one would have the best meaning. One of them looked okay until I checked the Genius, and the writer said the lyrics meant the singer wanted their love to go away, but they couldn't help it, which was completely counterproductive to the message I wanted to send, so that one was chalked off. One of them was just random. One of them I don't even know what version of it they wanted. I think the name was Juicy. I was offered Doja Cat and Biggie Smalls. The game didn't bother to provide me with an artist until after I sent the message, so I had to look up both. One of them was unintelligible, the other one was dedicated to teachers that didn't believe in him, so I was left with a Keith Urban song. And luckily it was a good choice, but man did it make me feel out of touch. I listened to garbage rock music. I don't think I've listened to the radio for about 4 years. As I've mentioned before, I'm big on spelling mistakes. There were a few, but given that it was mostly text speak, I couldn't really pick up on this point too hard. Although they did spell coronavirus wrong. It's been written in the news for at least 3 months, basically every day. It's not spelt with an A after the C. Coronavirus, not caronavirus. Also, how many times did I have to watch this man put question marks at the end of his questions and then delete them? I omit question marks from questions in text all the time for speed purposes, but if you write them in and it's grammatically correct, you've already put the effort in to get the punctuation in there, so don't delete it again afterwards. It's an extra waste of time and then becomes grammatically incorrect, so you're wasting time to make something right and then make it wrong again. As for the platforming element of it, I'll admit it was very unexpected. To be honest, I don't really know that much how I feel about it. I suppose in a way it helps with engagement to the story, since you're always focused on the screen and the messages that pop up. It's creative and a variant on the way choice-based text story games usually go, but the game is fairly linear for most of it, and since you can't stop the changing text midway or anything like that, the only purpose of the platformer mechanic really is to send the texts that have already been written and progress the game in parts where you're not making a choice. It's sort of unnecessary in a sense. But again, if you have a fairly linear pathway, you do need something to keep your player interested and negate the risk of them dozing off whilst reading text bubbles and waiting for them to pop up. The atmosphere of the game is good enough on its own. You get the frustration of the character rewriting perfectly good messages, and you feel his mood by the speed, the confidence, and the tone the messages are written with. Whether that atmosphere is enough to hold interest through the more linear sections can probably only be answered by trying it without the platformer. It appears to be unnecessary in some senses, but at the same time I can also see that it is performing a function. After being a nice friend, I then unlocked a realistic mode. I started it, the game said good luck, then it sent a message and sat undelivered for about 20 minutes. I left the game running and went to play Mahjong Titans on my phone. Came back, saw my message had been read. Then nothing else happened for nearly an hour. Turns out in realistic mode you have to wait almost a full 24 hours with the game running to complete it before you get a response. Which is eerily realistic and just like texting me. I guess it doesn't really add much content in the game and is just there for a fair played point and an achievement. The art and music side of things has little to critique, since all the animations are clean and simple. It's a black background with your little white glowy square and the text message bubbles, and the music is just an atmospheric background noise that fades away with your concentration, but does contribute to the suspense when you're waiting and tuned back into it. I like this game. It holds a message with the intent to bolster confidence in people who may be questioning or nervous about asking someone out, maybe thinking that it's not the right time, and it also has some sub-layers focused on engaging in tactful conversation and being aware and supportive to others when they express sadness to you. Text message is a very tricky medium of conversation, since you're lacking key communication outputs such as body language, facial expression and tone of voice, so actually in a way this game is also a test of your capability to read between the lines, or read too far between the lines, as is very easily done. It's got a good atmosphere to pull you in and does really well at indicating the character's feelings with typing timing and variations in messages, using emoticons, punctuation and capitalization. It took me 50 minutes to run through, so has decent duration to it, and it's easy to play and has a good story to it. I have minimal gripes with it, so I'll give Left on Red an 8.5 out of 10.